So we've made it to the last day of our management conference and the final session of our program track. During this hour and 15 minutes that we're going to have together, we're going to be wrapping up the session that we started yesterday, where we're focusing on reimagining service in this COVID-19 world. And our focus is going to be on actual resources that you can use, ways that we can be supporting you at YouthBuild USA. I want to start by looking back at what we did yesterday, just a quick refresher, and then we'll focus on our new content. So Matt kicked us off by reminding us, we probably didn't need the reminder, but a reminder of some of the challenges that we encountered this spring and the ways that you needed to pivot and the guidance that you received from YouthBuild USA. In many cases, we recommended and advised you to suspend your members and to stop service as you were responding to an emergency. But then Matt was talking to us about the importance of service in our program and why it's absolutely necessary that we have a plan in place so that service can continue at our program. He then walked us through that free write exercise, which I hope that you found to be a useful time, an opportunity to reflect on what service has meant to you personally, what it means to your young people, or even what you found was missing from your program when service was on hold. So we did that all individually, and even though we're apart, we were able to create something together. And we did that with Mentimeter in our word cloud. And this is what we created. So go ahead and take a look at all the words that were contributed from across the country about service. And the things that stand out to me, I see words like engagement, love, relationship, connection, community, impact. These are the things that we are fighting for to ensure that they are part of our program when we're planning for all those hiccups that may come our way with COVID. So making sure that we have these service projects planned. So that's what we're trying to hold on to. After we did that, we spent some time on compliance. Yeah, I absolutely talked about rules, but we were also focusing on opportunities to adjust our service. And we had a really good office hours. I know not everyone was able to be there, but there was a question that came up that I thought I should bring back here just in case there was any confusion. So there was a question about secondary service and how is that related to or different from modified service? So a lot of my examples, you might have been thinking, well, that's a secondary service project that we do all the time. Do I now need some sort of special approval? And no, when we were talking about modified service, we're talking about that within the realm of your primary service activities. So you have a primary service of construction that you can no longer do, and now we have to make a very large shift into doing something else. So that's what we meant by modified service. So if there's any other confusion, please get in touch with your portfolio manager and we can talk about that one-on-one. So we wrapped up our time together yesterday with our homework. We asked you to watch that service learning video, about 10 minutes long. So hopefully that was a quick, easy one for you to get through. And then maybe the more fun activity was the photo activity. So either finding that photograph or taking a new one to talk about your experience with shelter in place. And Matt, I believe we received a ton of responses.
Yeah, so absolutely. And just like your word cloud, Lauren, I was just blown away this morning about how positive everybody was. Thank you so much for sharing some of the positive things that you've seen during the shelter in place and the pandemic. I tried to reply to as many people as possible, but as you can imagine, we've had a very busy morning getting ready. So we're only going to have 3 people share later, but thank you again for everybody that shared. It was really great.
Absolutely. And so that brings us to where we are today, where our focus is on new resources. We've heard from you throughout these months about the challenges you're facing, and what we wanted to do is to be able to hand you something tangible to help support you in overcoming some of those challenges. So we're excited to share with you those new resources. And Lauren Troiano just sent a link for you in the chat to our updated service learning page. And what you're seeing on this side of the screen is an example of a service learning plan that we've put together. And we hope that it's something that will be very useful to you. It's something that you can download and have ideas of how to implement service learning. We've talked about service learning for years, but I think for many it was intimidating or you didn't feel like you had the time for it. So now we have a starting place for you here. Right now there's only 4 of these examples, but we believe it's going to grow. We're going to keep doing the work and producing these, but we are also hoping to partner with you. We want to know that these work. If you try them and they don't, we want that feedback because that's our goal for these to be useful. Also on this service learning page, you're going to find a reference to this participatory photo activity that we did. You're going to find a plan there. You can download information about civic reflection, things that we've talked about. So again, tangible resources, things that you can use is what you're going to find on this website. And we're going to keep talking about them throughout our presentation. So this is really just a sneak peek if you want to dive into the website now. So we asked you to do some homework, and I want to give us a chance to kind of reflect back on that, make sure we remembered some of the key points. So we've got our chat icon here, so be ready. Oh, Angela, super quick on that. Thank you.
Head of the class.
So the question is, which of these is a visual theme used throughout the video? So was it a ladder? Angela says it's stairs. Do you agree? Is it a classroom? Is it blueprints? Or is it none of the above? Was it something completely different? Let's go ahead. Thank you everyone in the chat. See what our answer was. So stairs was that visual theme. And the reason that was used is because there's 5 steps or stages, you might say, within service learning. So we have investigation, preparation or planning, action, reflection, and demonstration. So we represented that with the stairs. Next question for you. Go ahead and complete this sentence for me. Service learning is a framework for experiential learning. Is it a strategy for tying classroom instruction with service projects? Is it a way to make service projects more engaging? Or is it a tactic for helping members complete their AmeriCorps hours? Because there really isn't a wrong answer here. It is all of these. In fact, I think service learning is all of these and more. Yes, it is a framework for experiential learning. And it's a way to tie in all the aspects of your YouthBuild program to service. And how could that not make it more engaging when a member is more tied to it? And then finally, and what we definitely want you to take away from this, service learning is a strategy to help your members complete their AmeriCorps hours, because we are capturing more of what it takes to create a service project and having them engage in it. One more, let's do one more in the chat. Which is needed to successfully implement service learning? A, buy-in from the full staff team. B, a staff person dedicated to managing it, an AmeriCorps Vista, or D, intentional planning. So yep, a lot of A's and D's. This is the answer that I came up with. Well, I think it would be really helpful to have a staff person dedicated to managing service learning. I don't think it's something you have to have. I think it's more vital that it feels like a shared responsibility, that leadership supports service learning, that it's not just sitting with your AmeriCorps coordinator, that we have multiple people that are committed to service learning and making it happen. And of course, it has to have intentional planning. All service projects require planning, so this shouldn't be a surprise, but to do service learning, we have to think it out in advance and have a plan. So let's talk a little bit more about this. At YouthBuild USA, we truly believe that service learning is going to be a way forward as we move into the fall. We spoke to you, we learned from you, we heard engagement. That's a serious concern at a lot of YouthBuild programs. We have young people that are at home. We don't get to have them in space with us, so engagement is a concern. Our service projects, we just don't have as many for them to be engaged in. The time we can be together is shrinking. So we're concerned about our AmeriCorps hours. And I think service learning can address both of those concerns. As we talked about in our quiz question, it is a strategy for increasing engagement because members are connected to more of what it takes to do a service learning project. I actually think about it as taking things that happen behind closed doors and we're opening that door up to young people. Most service projects, I think, that happen, a lot of this work is done exclusively by staff. The staff person is figuring out, what are those needs that our young people could meet in the community and how are we going to prep and make it happen? And we're only inviting them into the process at the action stage. So we're opening that door up and letting our young people in to learn and experience all of it. So that's one of the reasons that we feel like service learning could be a way forward. If you weren't able to watch that video, I want to quickly go over this chart just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So we say there's five steps in the service learning process. First is investigation, and that can be investigation of your program, of you as a person. It could be of the community and its needs. So it's pretty wide ranging, but we're trying to get a handle on what the issues are that we might be able to address. Preparation phase can be very long, it could be short, but we're trying to find resources, we're developing partnerships, we're making plans. Action stage, this is what we're most familiar with when we think about a service project. We're out there, we're doing the thing, whatever it is. You'll see on the diagram, the reflection is really all over the place, and it absolutely should be. We, I think, all know and recognize that reflection is where the learning happens. It's when we think about what we did that we're able to connect it to ourselves and apply it other places. So within service learning, absolutely encourage reflection to happen early and often. And the final stage is demonstration. This could look like doing some sort of review of the outcomes. Did we actually do what we set out to do? Can we teach others what we learned? So that should give you an idea of what we mean by the 5 stages of service learning. So what isn't service learning? I want to be clear that we're not recommending that you now count everything at your program as service. And we're not taking loosely associated training and now counting it as service. There is still a real difference. We think about service, it's providing a benefit to the community. We spent a whole session on this last week talking about the distinctions and figuring out how to categorize things. In a traditional service project, I think it's pretty easy. The member goes out into the community, they do the thing, that's the service. But I want to acknowledge within the framework of service learning, it is harder to find that line because there's potentially a longer gap between when you start and when the thing happens in the community, right? So I think it's important that we introduce maybe some new ways to think about that and determine whether or not we would count something as service. So this is my checklist for counting service hours within a service learning project. And this is up on our website. You'll be able to refer back to this later. So first thing when we're imagining this activity and we want to decide if it's going to be service or not, is we have to decide, is it reasonable? Meaning, can I see a direct link between this activity and the service project? David Weatherly likes to call out our reasonable person test, and that's what this is as well. Would a reasonable person be able to see that, yeah, this activity clearly has a logical, direct link to the service project? Next, we want to take a look on whether or not it is participatory. Are the members actively involved? Do they have agency? Are they making choices? Does what they do make a difference in this project versus them being a passive participant? They're listening. We're doing the talking. That would be another area for you to consider. And then finally, once we've decided that it's service, we have to figure out how many hours are we going to count? And we brought this up yesterday within the framework of teleservice. So especially if that young person is not going to be with us and they're at home or they're doing something independently out in the community, how are we going to come up with a reasonable count of hours? So in cases where there's a measurable outcome that could help you, maybe you need to test those things out. So I think there's definitely strategies, but it's something to keep in mind that we have to figure out how many hours to count. So I want to provide a quick example, maybe help bring these concepts home. Perhaps during mental toughness, you took a survey from members to find out areas that they were passionate about, or maybe your policy council recommended something and you've decided you're going to do a service learning project on food insecurity. So maybe that's going to be a focus for a month. You're going to have service learning focused on that. You have a project coming up in the classroom. We're going to go out into a community park and we're going to be learning about the impact of pollution on animals. So it's going to be very participatory, but I think it would be hard to say that there's a direct link to our service project that we're focusing on food insecurity. Maybe you can make that link, but I think that it's on the edge. Versus if we were going to do something where we were doing some community mapping, we're talking about resources that are available, places to purchase food. It's easier to make that reasonable link and it to still be participatory. So those are the things that I would recommend thinking through. You could do it with your portfolio manager or on your own. We're always available. But please take a look at this checklist and think it through when you're imagining your service learning plans. This is the first time we've introduced this, so I think it makes sense for us to do another activity. So we're actually going to do a Maritime Trivia Service Learning Edition. If you were with us last week, you played this. Hopefully you thought it was fun then, and we're going to do it again. You're going to enjoy it. In fact, anyone who's been through our new site, new staff in the last several years has played a Maritime Trivia. Don't worry, new scenarios. So it should be fun. If you haven't played with us before, I'm going to describe a service activity, and all you have to do is in the chat tell me, is it service? Is that a service activity? Is it a training activity? Is it fundraising? Or is it no, this is not a maritime. We should not be counting this for AmeriCorps. So when we're in person, we get to use, piece of paper we hold up. We're a team. There's team names, the whole thing. But we are in Zoom land, so you're going to have to use the chat. So just STF or N. That's all I'll be looking for in the chat. So first I need to introduce what the service learning project is going to be, and you'll hold this in your head as I go through the activity. So we have to do this first. We have an unmet community need that we've identified as elementary school students don't have summer reading materials because the library is closed. And in response to that, we are going to build and stock library boxes and put them up throughout the community. All right, so that's first thing. Keep that in your mind as we go through. So here's our first activity. Members research grade level appropriate books. In the chat, let me know, do you think that that is a service activity, a training activity, a fundraising activity, or absolutely not something to count on AmeriCorps time? Feeling pretty confident on this one, it looks like. So let's reveal the answer and discuss. Yes, this is a service act. I'm going to say it is because I can make a reasonable, logical connection to what our service project is. We're not actually building those boxes yet, but I can see how it's connecting. Also, the members are participating and leading this activity. And again, it helps me come up with an accurate count on hours because there's going to be a result of the time that they spent on it. And I can use that to determine what would be reasonable to put on their AmeriCorps timesheet. Next one, staff provides members with a list of potential donors, and the members make calls asking for book donations. So we're kind of divided, it looks like, between S and F. So let's talk about this. The correct answer is fundraising. This is a lesser known area of a maritime, but maybe it's a new area for you to mine for AmeriCorps hours, because AmeriCorps members are allowed to earn up to 10% of their total time in fundraising if it's tied directly to the service project. So here we're asking for book donations. We're not raising money for the program overall, but specifically for our service project. So it's appropriate. We can put it on our AmeriCorps timesheet or hour log, and we can count it as long as it's fundraising. I think it's confusing because it's for a service project, but it's very important that we properly categorize it because there is that 10% limit. Members listen to a guest speaker share about their career as a librarian. Let's go ahead and see what the answer is. I'm going to say yes, this is training. So if you have guest speakers that come in, they're focused on career development, you could count that as training if it's under that 20% gap. We all know that training hours are very easy to come by, and you may not need to count something like this. But if it is under the 20% cap, you could count it as training hours. We don't count it as service because it's not participatory. I think that there's ways we could adjust this if we wanted it to be part of our service learning plan. Instead, the members could be tasked with going out and finding someone in the community and interviewing them. Not only can we learn about their career, but we could ask them about things relevant to our service project. Can you talk to us, librarian, about what books are popular? What would be, again, age-appropriate books that I might give? How can we make it more attractive? We can really ask them about their expertise, but again, the member would be leading that, and that would be something we could do to take this training to a service. Members build library boxes at home and install them around town. Service, training, fundraising, or definitely not a maritime. Okay, no questions here. Everyone recognizes this as our traditional action phase of a service project. This is what we're most familiar with when we think about service, the doing of the thing. Again, members are involved in a significant way. We're saying it's participatory. definitely we're doing the project, so there's no question that there's a reasonable connection. And again, we can see a measurable outcome that we can use to determine how many hours to count for service. Probably for a lot of these, I could have put up this note, but remember, if your members are going to be at home, we want to make sure that you have a teleservice policy in place. So anytime that they're not going to be with you, they're doing remote service that you're going to count, go ahead and have that teleservice policy. So members make videos discussing what they learned from the project. So I'm imagining members are making these videos, maybe they're posting it somewhere, and then other people can view them and comment. So maybe this is not something that takes only 5 minutes, but something a little bit longer. This one, we want everyone to definitely take away that reflection on service counts as service. We think that reflection is such a vital part of a service project, and CNCS agrees that whenever we're reflecting on a service project, we get to count it as service hours. And there's a lot of ways to do reflection. I think it's common, after a service project, we get together, we talk about it verbally. We could write essays about it. We can do photo, voice, civic reflection, but, also doing a video style reflection could be a way that we could count that as service. All right, and our final one in a maritime trivia. Members take photos of the boxes, document the locations, and create flyers and a website to share the project with the community. This is absolutely service. What we're seeing here is the demonstration phase of a service learning project. There's a reasonable connection, it's member-led, and there's a measurable outcome that we can use to count hours. So this is the end of trivia. I hope you enjoyed it, but also found it to be helpful. One of the things I want you to take away from this is when we incorporate service learning, we are adding so much more to what could have simply been building that library box. I think the members had an opportunity to learn more about themselves and their community. They earned more AmeriCorps hours, and hopefully it was a much more meaningful experience to them.
Before we jump into the plan, a little peek behind the curtain. Lauren and I have run through this 4 or 5 times. And watching that from the perspective of somebody who came to this conference for years before working it for the last 8 years, I was just thinking to myself, service learning again, Clerico? This is what you got? And I'm telling you, we've been talking about this. We've been working with programs, and we've always talked about service learning, this team, over the last 20 years as kind of this nebulous idea, right? This ideal that wouldn't it be great if we tied in the classroom to the service site? But now that we're stuck in these boxes, right? Like this might be the way forward. Maybe not the only way, but I really think that if we take a good look at the 5 steps of service learning and, build out projects with all of these steps, we could really expand out service experience. It's going to be great for young people in their life experience, but it's also going to help them get the service hour credit they need to finish. If you've been coming to this conference for over a decade, like I have, you've heard this tired example before. Let's clean up a neighborhood park. And again, it's always good to add context to the service that we're doing, and this fits as a modified way. Like we talked yesterday, this could be conservation. But let's really dive in to this example that we've been working on, because each one of these 4 service learning plans on the website is built out with real activities and real hour counts so you can see. Okay, so this is the first one, community cleanup. And I specifically started here because, again, if you've heard this service learning talk before, you've heard us talk about this kind of project. But instead of just giving you some, again, nebulous, vague examples, we've built this out with program partners with real activity. So first we start with reflection. Like Lauren said, reflection can happen all throughout the process. The last few years, we've been working on civic reflection. Actually, we've been quiet about it the last couple of years. We've been slowly building up this library of discussion plans based around an object to get your young people in the mindset of a certain service project. So our community cleanup example here starts out with consumerism. This was a civic reflection plan developed at OWTC YouthBuild in Ogden, Utah. It's been used at programs a number of times. It has great facilitator notes. We know that this, when done correctly, lasts at least 2 hours and could be 2 sessions that could last even longer than that. So what consumerism is based around is objects. They're photos of people with a week's worth of their trash, and having a discussion about what we waste and where that waste ends up. And sometimes that can end up in our parks and in our beaches and all that sort of thing. There's actually a second part that's all about watching a video and having a discussion about what happens to your clothes when you donate them. Where do they actually end up in the world? And what could we do to, be part of that process? So again, this is something that's been tried and true at a program. We know it takes at least 2 hours to do properly. We would love you all to get trained in civic reflection, and there'll be some opportunities for that, but anybody can take these down and at least have a good discussion. So that's reflection. Then we get into investigation. Linked here is one of the 2 photo voice activities that we have on that website right now. We attended a training in London virtually with the actual Center for Photo Voice, and they helped us design a couple plans. We have a couple more on the way. But yeah, this is just a really great activity for your young people to get out in the community, take some pictures, and tell the story of what, litter and what things out in the community kind of break your spirit to see. And come back and reflect on that, but then also start to investigate our solutions to that. So again, this could be 2 hours of participatory investigation and discussion if done properly. And again, we're going to try one of these out in a minute, and there'll be more coming, and there's going to be a training on photo voice this fall. But we know that this can work. So we're giving them a little bit of independent service credit for doing what we're asking them to do independently, and then some service credit for being part of that investigatory discussion. Then a second session where we discuss those photos, but then also start to identify how we can be part of the solution. The next thing, I guess, would be an independent study, doing some brainstorming or thought showering about what we could do and what a project could look like. Maybe this looks like an essay. If somebody comes back and has done the work, we could give them a little bit of credit there. And then planning, right? Like Lauren said, as staff members, we do a lot of this planning ourselves. And bringing the young people in to be part of those discussions, maybe even little subcommittees, one to talk about who are we gonna recruit to help us out with this? What supplies are we gonna need? Let's come up with a list. Let's plan that out. When is this gonna happen? And then everybody can kind of come back together and share what they've built in their own independent groups. And then maybe there's some more independent study after that where, we give the young people some prompts to start to put these plans together. And then there's the actual service project ideas, right? So we've been trying to think of these in terms of what kind of things could programs still do if they couldn't be together in person. The first of these came up, trash tag. I don't know if you guys are active on social media and have seen these examples, but it's typically like a post on Instagram or Twitter with 2 pictures, right? One's a dirty beach with bottles and cans all over it. And then the second one is a group of young people sitting on 15 trash bags. It ties in the demonstration. This is a great way to demonstrate the impact we're having. If we came up with some sort of hashtag that, was a common one so that we could show everybody in the community what we were doing with our little independent individual projects, but the greater impact we were having collectively. Another idea we came up with, I thought about YouthBuild Philadelphia Charter School. Every year for Martin Luther King Day, they do a mural project. Well, back in my day at Albany YouthBuild, we used to do paint by numbers murals. I would go, I would design the mural, I would draw it out on the wall, and then we would give elementary students different colors so they could fill these in. But what if we thought about it a different way? What if we have to be in smaller, socially distant groups? Maybe you have a 2-person red team, and then 2 hours later, the 3-person blue team comes in and does their piece. And then, your staff can come in and finish it off later. And then everybody's going to look at that mural and be like, wow, I had a part of that. I had an impact, even if my part of it was just small. And then yesterday during office hours, we talked about these little construction projects. Some of the programs on the line are starting to test this out. What would it look like, since we're doing a lot of NCCR instruction over online platforms like this? What if we dropped off a kit for the young people to practice on during their practical time with their construction training? And while they were doing that practical time online via Zoom or Google Classroom, they were creating something of value for the community. Maybe it's birdhouses, maybe it's a planter box. But like Lauren said, there's a benefit to the community. Now, how many hours do we give for each of these projects? I think we have to try them out and see. I think we have to lean on the expertise of our construction trainers and our other service supervisors and be like, hey, if a young person finishes this planter box from cutting the wood to painting it, how long should that take if they do it correctly? And if that's the case, and I make 5 planter boxes, then right there's your calculation. So then another reflection, like Lauren said, the example we use here is just a simple debrief. How did it go? What could we do better? What did we expect to see and then maybe didn't happen? And I think a lot of this could happen this fall as we're trying these out. Tasking your young people with coming up with some of their own ways to demonstrate what they've done and teach others how they learned how to do it out in the community. And then actually doing that, again, the hours here are going to be variable depending on the nature of the activity. So this is just one example. Again, we're starting with 4. We have 2 or 3 in the works now. So keep your eye out on the e-newsletter. Another one I'm really excited about, and I got to give a shout out to one of our team members, is the one that Lauren pictured earlier, the one on food insecurity. We have a couple programs that are working on culinary right now. And man, the pandemic is tough for that because you are not serving food to school children or to the elderly anymore. But luckily, the A-team has a trained nutritionist on staff. So Allison Oslin doesn't just coordinate our team and make sure the work comes together, but she also, like I said, she has a background in nutrition. And if you look through that plan, she's got some really smart ideas about how we can start to work on food insecurity, how we can map the community and find out where nutrition is coming from. She put a lot of really great discussion questions in there. So take a look through, and each one of these plans has different examples built into it for each one of the steps. And you could probably even mix and match. I just really wanted to make sure that we had as many ideas as we could get out on paper as possible. So I'm excited about photo voice. So that is part of a couple of the plans in the investigation phase. So let's try it out. Again, thank you, everybody. We gave you a little homework last night to take a picture of what the pandemic has looked like to you. And, you never know what to expect when you make an ask like that. I expected to see a lot of depressing things like I do when I read the news or I'm on social media lately. But I got to hand it to the YouthBuild AmeriCorps network. I was so inspired all morning by everybody who sent in pictures of their kids and sent in pictures of beautiful things they had seen on nature walks and stuff like that. I mean, you guys are so positive. Like I said at the reception, sometimes just being part of this movement and part of this group just carries me through. So I just wanted to say I appreciate that. in a typical photo dialogue, when we're talking about photo voice, everybody's come back with what they've captured out in the community. And as a group, we kind of all discuss each one of the photos. So we don't have the time for that. And there's 134 people in this meeting, so that could get out of hand. I think as we're discussing these photos back and forth with the people who we kind of bullied into sharing about their photos, if you could in the chat box, maybe give some impressions of how you feel about the photos that we're looking at together. What are your impressions? What do you feel these pictures are communicating? What part of the image evokes something out of you? And maybe something about aesthetics. You know, a big part of photo voice is visual literacy, something we get taught in art school. You know, we're not really versed in that, so I'm not worried about too much of that. But if you have some thoughts, please share them in the chat box. Excellent. Well, thank you for letting us share your photo and telling us a little bit more about it. So you gave us a caption a little bit about unexpected time. Could you talk about that a little bit?
The unexpected blessing in all this, as we were stay at home, was just having more time, you know, more time with family, more time. In my case, it was remodels, and been looking at that roof for years, knowing it needed to be replaced, and went, well, I have more time, so I'll do it now.
Well, good luck with it. I mean, it's definitely, that's a tough project to do when it's hot outside, for sure.
Yeah, it's only 107 in Reading.
Yeah, so I mean, this one spoke to me and your caption, Lane, because I've been thinking about that a lot, right? Like in another life, you know, I did a lot of art, and I've been thinking to myself, you know, now that I have time, all these projects that I have scattered all over the house, that I'm like, oh, I'll get to them. I'll finish that painting. I'll do that stained glass window. I'll paint that room. And now we have nothing but, right? So yeah, I also wanted to say, you know, just looking at the picture aesthetically, I really like the angle that you took, how the roof itself kind of cuts the picture in half in a diagonal way. It kind of draws your eye across. You know, I also, there was something really neat there about the neutral colors of the roof being the work part of the picture, where there's this promise of the pool waiting for you when you're done. It definitely tells a story.
Yeah, that pool kept me going sometimes.
I bet. But yeah, I don't know if you meant for that to happen, but yeah, really aesthetically pleasing photos. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Awesome. So we're going to move on. So photo voice, again, you've heard us talk about it before. We mentioned it last year after Lauren had learned about it at the Points of Light conference in 2019. We kind of threw it out there as, hey, this is something else you can do for reflection. But again, like Julia was saying, when everything came down and we were just like, what can we do to help programs? There was an opportunity for one of us to be part of a photo voice training, which was in London. And in a normal world, maybe I would have gotten to go to London, but we got to do it online. And yeah, what they're doing is so incredible and so interesting, and really parallels our work with YouthBuild and AmeriCorps. And it's one of these tools. It's not the only tool for investigation, but it's one we're really excited about. And we're going to showcase this fall with a training and maybe some more of these outlines. It's participatory photography. It's photography by those who are affected by the issues that they're capturing. It's me using my voice instead of someone else telling my story for me. So I think you can start to realize how this is right in line with YouthBuild and the leadership development work that we're doing. And it's so easy to do. We'll have a training on it. There's some really great things that you can add to it, like talking about visual literacy, like I kind of stumbled through there in our example. But our students know how to do this, right? They're doing this on Instagram, on Snapchat every day. And we could show them how to do it better, and not only how to do it better, but how to express some of the things that are going on with them, right? Because, you know, you can't always trust what you're hearing, especially on the internet these days. And, you know, sometimes when these news outlets are telling our young people's story, they're getting it wrong. So if we could show them how to do it themselves, it could be really powerful for your leadership development. But then again, just kind of like the example that we just went through and some of the other things we're going to put on the service learning page, we could use this for investigation. Show me what pollution looks like in your community. Show me what food insecurity looks like in your neighborhood. And it could be really powerful. And there's a lot of great online platforms that we've been showing off this week that you could throw those photos on and show your board or show your service partners what your young people are seeing. It could really, really be powerful. And, you know, there's a low cost of entry. Everybody has a camera phone these days. And if someone doesn't, you know, digital cameras are pretty cheap. And, you know, if you were going to get involved in this sort of activity, we could certainly build that in to your AmeriCorps budget. And it's easily shareable. Again, they know how to do this on social media. There are ways that we can put these pictures out so everybody can see through our young people's eyes. And anyone can do it, right? You don't have to be a professional photographer to take a good picture. There's a real low skill floor. And it's easy for you too, right? We will have a training on this, but you know, you could do this right now. So the activity that we gave you for homework and then we kind of briefly just walked through is one of the 2 photo voice activities we have ready for you on the service learning page, the pandemic perspective one. You're gonna have a bunch of young people coming in soon, maybe for a virtual mental toughness. So, you know, maybe we talk to them and have them show us what the last few months have looked like to them. And maybe that's a jumping off point to start to think about what we can do as a program to help our community if this pandemic continues. So again, there's this one, there's the eye bleach and eye sore one that was in the service learning plan that we went through together. So, and we have 3 or 4 more ready to go. They just need some touching up. So keep an eye on that e-newsletter because more stuff will be coming soon. Also coming soon is going to be more training. So we tried to keep this conference as tight and efficient as possible. We didn't want you to sit here for 5 days, for 8-hour Zoom days. No one's paying attention to that. So unfortunately, what that meant was a lot of the fun stuff, the second level stuff that we wanted to do kind of got thrown on the cutting room floor. So just like we did in the spring with the crash course, what we're cheekily calling the master class is going to be a lot of these methods and more if we can find them. So yeah, the plan isn't very specific at this point, but we will have a photo voice training. I'm really excited about photo voice, guys. I really am excited to show you what it can do. There's some real power there, and there's some neat things that we can add to it. Like I said, some of the visual literacy pieces we could all get a little bit better at and then teach our young people how to do this better. Civic reflection. Like I said, we've let that field fallow for a few years, but you know, maybe it's time to bring it back. These are really great discussions to have. And we have a library right now with 12 discussion plans that were developed at programs and have been tried at programs. And, you know, that you could pull down tomorrow and have a discussion with your young people. A lot of them are built around themes. So if you know you're going to do a conservation service project, then yeah, pull down that guerrilla gardener one, because that gets young people excited about planting tomatoes somewhere in the city. Yeah, and you could start that right away. Again, this isn't brain surgery, but there are some tips and tricks we've learned over the years that we would love to share with you during that facilitation training. And if we get a lot of people signing up, maybe we'll do 2 or 3. And then finally, what we're calling right now is making it happen, is creating one of these plans. Also on that service learning site is the template that we use to create the plans that we have there. Easy to follow, it doesn't take a lot, but we're doing a lot of research and we're learning a lot from YSA, Youth Service America, they're like the experts at service learning. And some of the things that aren't built into these plans that eventually will go into these plans and will be part of this training is what kind of curriculums could we build out in the classroom to go along with what we're now going to be doing as service, maybe remotely, so that everything kind of clicks as clockwork. I'm really excited about that part. I didn't have time to add that to these plans, but there's some really great implications there. And again, this is just the beginning. We have 4 plans. We have 2 photo voice activity outlines, but we're going to be adding to this all fall. So keep an eye on the e-newsletter. We'll be talking to you in October for our first of the bi-monthly conference calls. And we really want to hear if these worked for you or if you have more ideas. I have some other programs. I'm going to call them out. YouthBuild McLean County is doing some great stuff with educating young people on younger people, not our students, but elementary school students on healthy practices. They're creating workbooks. So yeah, I'm going to push them. They're going to make one of these plans and we're going to put it up on the website, because if somebody's figuring it out, maybe some other program in the network won't have to recreate the wheel. Some of our programs that are really good at digital divide are trying to figure out how they can do the service they were doing, educating seniors in the community about how to be safe online. How do you do that online? How do you prepare for that? How do we track those hours? So I'm coming for those programs too, and you know who you are. I'm not going to call you out because we haven't talked about it yet. We'll get this together so that you guys who may be doing digital divide have at least somewhere to start from. And again, you know, the more we can build together, I think we can make some great things here. And this may not be the only way forward, but I think it's definitely a strong start. So again, thank you for listening to me rant. I was really excited. We've been working on this for a while, and I was excited to show all you guys. I'm sorry I'm losing my voice. All these things are small, right? A civic reflection only takes a couple hours. You know, a service project, cleaning up a little park, or maybe I'm building something at home. It's not going to be 450 hours, right? But together we can build it in little ways. In these little things that I'm doing independently or we're doing as a program, as a network, we could have a huge collective impact. And sometimes I think it's just important to do something, right? It may not be what we planned. It may not be the grand things that we're used to doing, but sometimes just doing something is enough. And to illustrate that, we wanted to show this video, which is actually the object of one of those discussion plans on the Civic Reflection Library, developed at a program. Yeah, watch this. I think you'll see why we wanted to close with it. Thank you.
Back in New York, I am the head of development for a nonprofit called Robin Hood. When I'm not fighting poverty, I'm fighting fires as the assistant captain of a volunteer fire company. Now, in our town, where the volunteers supplement a highly skilled career staff, you have to get to the fire scene pretty early to get in on any action. I remember my first fire. I was the second volunteer on the scene, so there was a pretty good chance I was going to get in. But still, it was a real foot race against the other volunteers to get to the captain in charge to find out what our assignments would be. When I found the captain, he was having a very engaging conversation with the homeowner, who was surely having one of the worst days of her life. Here it was, the middle of the night. She was standing outside in the pouring rain, under an umbrella, in her pajamas, barefoot, while her house was in flames. The other volunteer who had arrived just before me, let's call him Lex Luthor, got to the captain first and was asked to go inside and save the homeowner's dog. The dog! Oh, I was stunned with jealousy. Here was some lawyer or money manager who for the rest of his life gets to tell people that he went into a burning building to save a living creature. Just because he beat me by 5 seconds. Well, I was next. The captain waved me over. Said, Bezos, I need you to go into the house. I need you to go upstairs, past the fire, and I need you to get this woman a pair of shoes. I swear. So, not exactly what I was hoping for, but off I went. Up the stairs, down the hall, past the real firefighters who were pretty much done putting out the fire at this point, into the master bedroom to get a pair of shoes. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm no hero. I carried my payload back downstairs where I met my nemesis and the precious dog by the front door. We took our treasures outside to the homeowner where, not surprisingly, his received much more attention than did mine. A few weeks later, the department received a letter from the homeowner thanking us for the valiant effort displayed in saving her home. The act of kindness she noted above all others, someone had even gotten her a pair of shoes. You know, in both my vocation at Robin Hood and my avocation as a volunteer firefighter, I am witness to acts of generosity and kindness on a monumental scale. But I'm also witness to acts of grace and courage on an individual basis. And you know what I've learned? They all matter. So as I look around this room at people who either have achieved or are on their way to achieving remarkable levels of success, I would offer this reminder. Don't wait. Don't wait until you make your first million to make a difference in somebody's life. If you have something to give it now. Serve food at a soup kitchen, clean up a neighborhood park, be a mentor. Not every day is going to offer us a chance to save somebody's life, but every day offers us an opportunity to affect one. So get in the game. Save the shoes. Thank you.